a little chat box there on your WebEx, so you will be able to ask questions. I will have 15 or 20 minutes reserved at the end to answer any questions you have, so feel free to ask me any questions on that chat. And let's go ahead and get started here. So for our audience today, we have a variety of users that might be interested in Laserfiche. So we have prospective Laserfiche users, anyone who is new to Laserfiche records management, since it is an additional component to our software, and anyone who has a basic understanding of Laserfiche will be with us today. So I'm going to be highlighting a lot of the things that any of you will be interested in for prospective users or for anyone who's currently using the Laserfiche system. So for our agenda today, I'm going to go over these 5 key points here. I'm going to be going over what is Laserfiche and why Laserfiche for our prospective users, and I'm going to be going over a little bit of an overview for general records management so you can get an understanding of what that means. And then I'll be going a little bit deeper into what Laserfiche records management means. And then the last thing I'm going to be showing you is a demonstration of records management. So I'm going to be showing you records management within Laserfiche in action. So the first key point I'm going to be discussing today is what is Laserfiche. So just a little bit about Laserfiche. Laserfiche is an enterprise content management software company, or we like to refer it as an ECM software company, that provides powerful tools that capture and manage documents, along with automating a lot of your organization's business processes. We started our business around 1987, and we have about 35,000 organizations that use Laserfiche today. So just to give you a bit of background of how documents work within Laserfiche and what features may be available for you, any documents that are stored on Laserfiche can be accessed on a desktop or, if you would like to, on a laptop or mobile devices online. What this is going to allow you to do is keep your information secure and controlled at every stage of the document's lifecycle. And it's going to allow you to meet regulatory compliance needs by providing detailed auditing that maintains a log of users' actions. We have things such as digital signatures, which is going to help you verify the integrity of all your files. We have records management tools, which I'll be discussing today, that archive and retain records on industry-leading standards like the Department of Defense 5015.2 certification. We also have many integration and collaboration tools, and we integrate with many ERP, which is Enterprise Resource Planning, and CRM platforms. So ultimately, our workflow tools are going to help you streamline all your business processes there, which can include anything from accounts payable to records management, which I'll be going into today. So to begin, why are you going to consider using Laserfiche? Some of the reasons being, we are one of the leaders of a highly competitive enterprise content management industry, and we actually are the largest privately held ECM company. Another great thing to note is we've never outsourced the development of our products, so our products are seamless and are not patched together. So what does electronic records management actually mean? So nowadays, regulatory and compliance mandates seem to be increasing exponentially, and so do paper records. Physical records management isn't always practical for organizations with limited storage space or who might have a wide variety of informational formats. So what an ERM system is going to allow you to do, or electronic records management system is going to allow you to do, is going to allow you to support your organization-wide compliance while reducing the cost and labor associated with maintaining all those paper documents. So some of the benefits of Laserfiche here, I'm going to be going into more detail about this. So Laserfiche is a really comprehensive content management system. We have been in the game for about 27 years, and over this time we've been able to serve many different types of businesses, anything ranging from government institutions to Fortune 1000 companies there. We've been able to accomplish this goal due to our ability to respond to the changing needs of our customers and by developing a system that people love to use. So here are some of the benefits here, and specifically records management is going to allow your organization to be at its most efficient. So some of the benefits here, it's going to allow you to increase productivity. It's going to allow you to maximize your organization's efficiency. It's going to enable that automation. It's going to have flexible configuration as well. And then ultimately, it's going to reduce storage costs. So, and again, electronic records management is going to allow you to automate a lot of the manual tasks you have in managing all your information. So here we have 5 key points that really describe the Laserfiche core functionality. These processes are the 5 core functionalities of Laserfiche, and these core functionalities encompass everything that's necessary in an effective ECM solution. So we have search and retrieval, capture, distribution, automation, and the security of your documents. One of the most important facets of an ECM system is actually being able to find the information that you have saved. Then from here, it's important that this information be routed and organized to the person that needs to deal with that specific contact. So here at Laserfiche, we have these core functionalities because document management has evolved so much from a simple storage solution, and now it encompasses a lot more, which includes automation, distribution, and security of your information. And we also know that in this time and age, it's absolutely necessary to have a secure storage system. So we're really going to focus on this 5th core functionality right here. Our records management component focuses on many of these functionalities, including searching and retrieving, as well as some of the automation processes. However, out of these 5, the last core functionality is the security of your Laserfiche repository, which is going to be where all your content is stored. That's going to be the main focus of our discussion today and Laserfiche records management. So now I'm going to be going over what records management actually means within an organization. So what is records management? Records management is a systematic process of managing the creation, retrieval, storage, and disposal of digital or physical records throughout their life cycle. So you have these 2 ways of thinking about content. This is something really important to note when talking about records management, since it is really a whole different way of organizing your information. So from this point forward, we're actually going to refer to two ways of thinking here. It's going to be content-based organization and rules-based organization. So normally, one would organize documents based on their contained information. For example, all of one's employees' files are filed in his or her employee folder, but since how we work with and store records is governed by actual strict rules, this is what we're going to organize our records by, and this is our rules-based organization rather than content-based. So why records management? Effective records management serves a variety of purposes and can benefit your organization in several ways. So what records management is going to allow your organization to do is it's going to increase the efficiency of locating records via records management searches. It's going to help you identify permanent records, which helps you prevent records from being lost. It's going to make sure your record-keeping practices fulfill legislative and regulatory compliance, which is going to allow you to prove that these practices and retention policies are being followed. It's going to make sure your records are available if anyone requests them, if, let's say, a judicial order was set in place. It's going to make sure your records are available for an appropriate amount of time before they're actually destroyed. And it's going to ensure that records are made read-only as appropriate. So this is going to actually prevent inactive records from being modified or changed in any way. So overall, records management is going to help you with compliance. It's going to help prove rules that are being followed, and it's going to mitigate all that risk within your organization. So I'm going to be going over what content-based organization looks like within the Laserfiche repository. So here we have a snapshot of what Laserfiche client looks like. Here we have the repository. It's labeled as Laser Investigators. And your repository is, like I said, is going to be where all your content is stored. We like to refer to it in Laserfiche here as your digital filing cabinet or your digital vault. So right away you can see the client looks fairly familiar. We have mocked this to look like the Windows environment. You see here the nested file folder structure, which collapses. And so we just did this so there's less of a learning curve when dealing with documents in the repository and when searching for documents in the repository. It just makes it a lot easier. So again, this is the Laserfiche client, and for those who are familiar, we can see the folder structure here in this repository, the Laser Investigators repository. So here we have a client folder, a human resources folder, and a regulation folder. So here this is content-based organization. Let's say I'm part of the HR department and I'm looking for all the employee information for a specific person. So I would go about doing that by expanding the resources folder. So let's go ahead and do that. Once I go ahead and open the human resources folder open, I'm looking for an employee record. So there's a folder with their folder in that name. So I'm going to go ahead and expand the employee record folder. Now you can see a list of all the employees and all the employee folders here. So at this point, what we need to know is whose records we're looking for. If we want to see Renee's file, we just open her folder. If we need to see Peter's file, we're going to open up his folder, etc. So now on the content pane on the right-hand side, you can see all of Renee's files are listed here. So we could access her employee contract or her W-2, her job application. We can access all her files that are associated with Renee. So what we like to think of content-based organization is document management, so as opposed to records management. So this is the normal organization of all your files. So let me show you what these same documents are. However, they're going to be in a rules-based organization format. So here we are again in the folders pane. This time it does look a little different. These funny little things right here on the left-hand side on the folders pane, these are record series. This is a records management folder structure. And as you can see, the folder structure is organized based on the type of document it is. So if it's an employee contract, if it's a tax record, this is because each type of document needs to follow specific or different rules. In this scenario, it would be a lot harder to find documents. So if I wanted to find Renee's employee contract, I would have to expand that record series. So once I open employee contracts, you can see Renee has her own folder within this record series. However, there's only one document there. So if I wanted to find her W-2 as well, I would have to go to the tax records record series. So I'll go ahead and collapse the contracts pane, or the contracts folder, and open up the tax records. So now because all the tax records for a certain year follow the same rules, the folders aren't organized by name. So I would have to know which year Renee was hired in order to find her W-2. So ultimately in records management, what you're doing is you're organizing your folders based on the document type to make sure that specific rules are being followed for that document type. So what is records management? Like we saw, records management is really a different way of thinking about how you organize the content in your repository. And it requires some forethought. You need to know what rules you need to follow so that you can plan your records management filing structure accordingly. Both of the organizational structures I just showed you are from the same repository, but the filing structure looked different. That's because I was showing you what the repository looked like from the point of view of two different users. So the two different users being an HR employee and a records manager. So the ability to make the same repository look different to different users is one of the great things about Laserfiche records management. It allows you to control what users actually see when they're browsing through the repository. So your general content-based employees shouldn't be looking at your records management folders because they don't really understand the details of records management rules. It's just going to confuse them and clutter up their view. And for records management, for records managers, they're not going to want to see content-based organization because they really don't care. All they're worried about is, they need to ensure that rules are being followed. And this is a concept that we've pioneered here at Laserfiche. This is what we like to refer to as transparent records management. So now I'm going to be going over what the life cycle of a record actually is going to look like within Laserfiche. So each record has a life cycle. This is the records movement from creation to disposition. So from creation and whenever you're going to get rid of that record. A record has life cycles. This life cycle has 3 phases. It's active phase, when the record is actually being edited and modified. And at the end of its active phase, the record is cut off, meaning it's going to enter its retention phase. From this point, the record is no longer being edited, so it's only in a read-only format, and it's retained for a certain amount of time, depending on what your retention plans are at your organization. And at the end of retention, the record becomes eligible for disposition, which is ultimately the end of the record's life cycle. So here at the active phase, this is when the record is going to be used, when it's going to be edited and modified throughout the organization. So people might be working on it, people might be making edits to it, changes to it. And from there, it's going to reach its cutoff. So cutoff is a term specific to Laserfiche, but ultimately what cutoff means is cutoff is what triggers retention within Laserfiche. So when you cut off a record, that tells Laserfiche that the record is no longer active and that the retention period is going to start. In Laserfiche, there are many types of cutoffs to make it flexible within your organization. But basically, you can cut off a record after a certain amount of time or after a certain event has happened or occurred. And after that cutoff, that's going to really start the retention period there. So this phase means the record is only in read-only format and is no longer being modified or edited. And from your retention, you're going to be going to your disposition. So after the retention, the record enters disposition, which means you're either going to, a records management is going to perform a destruction, so delete the record, accession, transfer the record to someone else, something like an archival organization, or really none of these. And this is a special case because the system just recognizes the record as staying in the system indefinitely. And here's another option you can take when dealing with records and their properties. You can actually freeze a record to keep it from completing its retention period, so it can't be dispositioned. So this is just a special option. Whatever your organization's plans may need, if you need to freeze a record for any certain reason, you can do so within Laserfiche. So now I'll be going over what cutoff actually means and what kind of cutoffs that are possible within an organization and for records management. So cutoff is the action the records manager does to signal to Laserfiche that the record should move into its retention phase. Laserfiche offers many types of cutoffs in order to fit your needs. But just so we have them on one slide, I'll be going over each one. So we have flexible cutoff eligibilities, which include time, the event, time and event. We have intervals, and events as well. So here's an example of what a time cutoff looks like. So at a specific time, the record is going to be cut off. So for example, in 2015, financial records should be cut off in January of 2016, so January 1st, 2016. So that record has to reach a specific time in order for that cutoff period to occur. Similar to time is an interval cutoff, but it's actually based on a cycle. So after a certain amount of months, a record is going to be cut off. So for example, internal applications should be eligible for cutoff after 6 months. So it's undergoing a cycle rather than a specific time. And here we have an event cutoff. When an event occurs, that record is going to be cut off. So employee records should be eligible for cutoff upon retirement. So a specific event needs to occur in order for that record to reach its cutoff eligibility. So here we have the time and event cutoff. So this really allows you to collect all records with events that occur during a specific time cycle and then cut them off at the same exact time. So what this is going to allow you to do for records managers, it's going to allow you to lessen the number of actions that you actually have to perform. So when an event occurs, the cutoff records at the start of the next time cycle. So here's an example. Student records should be eligible for cutoff on the first day of the next calendar year after graduation. So the event cutoff is going to be after graduation, and the time cutoff is going to be the first day of the next calendar year. So you have both of those events taking place in order for that record to reach its retention phase. So now I'll be going over a slide example of what that looks like. So here's an example of a records management rule. So let's really break this down and find out how this is going to translate within Laserfiche. So this example, we're going to go over an invoice. So this is going to be our record here. So after its active phase, it's telling us, you need to hold this invoice for at least 3 years after it's paid, then destroy. So what's the cutoff? This is going to be an event cutoff. So after the invoice has been paid, then it's going to enter its retention period there for 3 years. So after it's paid is going to be its cutoff. So the invoice paid eligible for cutoff on January 15th, 2015. So what's the retention period? The retention period is going to be 3 years. So for a records manager, they're only going to be liable for the records for that minimum time there. So they are looking at this invoice and holding it for 3 years and retaining it for 3 years. And after that retention period, it's going to be eligible for disposition. So after that 3-year retention, we can disposition the record. And what type of disposition is used here is destruction. So that was 1 record folder and 3 records management actions I did there. So it might look a little bit different when you have multiple records folders with this specific life cycle. So let me go ahead and show you what that looks like. So I'm going to be going over an example of what multiple records folders look like here for a cutoff. So here we're going to have the same life cycle, but we have more responsibilities. So we're going to be dealing with more records here. So as you can see, the cutoffs are at different times. So the dispositions are going to be at different times as well. With 2 records folders, we have 6 actions to perform, whereas in our last example, we only had 3 actions to perform. So you can see how that would increase the more record folders that we have. So let me show you a better way of going about organizing your policies and records management needs here. So here we're going to have 2 different invoices. One is going to be eligible for cutoff on January 15th. The other one is going to be eligible for cutoff on January 18th. So here are some best practices when about minimizing the amount of actions you're taking place in records management. So here we have a time and event cutoff. So we have invoices paid on an invoice paid on January 15th and another invoice paid 3 days later. So if we make both of those invoices eligible for cutoff on February 1st, they're both going to be eligible for disposition on the same date rather than on 2 different dates. So by using this time and event cutoff, it's going to help avoid the increasing number of actions we're taking place. So now as the invoices are paid, those events just mean that the records folders can both be cut off at the same time cycle. And so since those cutoffs are at the same time, the retentions are at the same time as well, and they're both eligible for disposition at the same exact time. So here we have 2 invoices paid before February, and the disposition is February 1st. So now I'm going to be discussing how our Laserfiche records management systems are really going to allow you to minimize risk within your organization. So once we actually dispose of records, we may be asked to prove that we did this properly, and this is where our audit trail component really comes into play. So let me go over what audit trail is. Audit trail is another component that can be in addition to your records management needs. This edition of your software allows you to monitor specific documents, specific people, which you can configure yourself. And you can generate reports on specific actions that occur within your repository with specific documents, like I said. And this can pretty much track anything that occurs in the repository. And we like to refer this as who, what, when, and where actions actually occur. So here's an example of what Audit Trail looks like. Audit Trail allows you to run these reports to prove that you're actually following rules in case you ever get audited. So here we have what document you're dealing with here, when it was edited, and who made the edits to those records. So for Laserfiche and records management in general, information governance is a huge deal. And for those who don't know what information governance is, it's a set of multidisciplinary structures, policies, procedures that allows you to manage information at an enterprise level. So it's going to support your organization's regulatory, legal, risk, and operational requirements. And what our records management component actually does, it's going to allow you to give access to shortcuts to documents rather than giving you or other users actual documents. So it's going to preserve document integrity. And that creates file structure that insulates sensitive files from general users. And this allows you to maintain information governance throughout your organization. Another component we have here, we have this Department of Defense 5015.2 certification, which only a handful of solutions have. And it's really the gold standard nowadays for records management systems. So what I'm going to be showing you now is a demonstration of what Laserfiche records management actually looks like in action. So I'm going to go ahead and open the Laserfiche client up here. And the first thing you notice is our list of available repositories. So like I said before, your repository is your digital filing cabinet where all your content is going to be stored. And we do have this Windows authentication button, which is a different way of logging in if you would like to use that single sign-on functionality. I'm going to go ahead and log in the old-fashioned way with a username and password. And I'm going to actually sign in as a general user. So who I'm going to sign in is our recruiter, who's going to be Riley Recruiter, who's going to be in charge of managing specific employee files, applications, things of that nature. Just so I can show you the difference between what content-based and rules-based organization looks like. So here we have the Laserfiche repository. Like I said before, it's mocked over the Windows environment here. So we have this nested folder structure. So I can expand and collapse these folders. And so this is really the content-based organization. So if I were to go to human resources, if I were to go to the employee files folder, you see here these employee files are foldered depending on who is employed at the organization. So here I have a few different employees. So this is going to be your content-based organization. So like I said before, what Laserfiche records management actually is, you can see here on this little thumbnail is an arrow on the lower left-hand corner of that thumbnail. this is signifying that this is an actual shortcut to the document rather than the original document itself. And this is going to provide transparent records management throughout your organization. So what I'm going to show you now, rather than a general user like just such as Riley Recruiter here, I'm going to go ahead and log in as a records manager and show you what that looks like. So right away, you see the different folder structure here. So here we have these rule-based organization, depending on what the file type is, and we have these records series folders here. So if I were to go back to an employee file, employee record, let's say I go to the application. I was looking at Alex Steele's application before. You can see that this is the original document here. So that is what the records manager is going to be looking at, is the actual original documents here. So this is the final resting place of the actual document rather than having that shortcut. So like I said before, Ralph Records here has these records organized by rules, and he has them organized by document type, because Ralph cares about, that documents are filed correctly and they have the correct retention schedules. So here you can see these column views are a little different than what we saw in the previous user's repository. So instead of having them, filed by file whose folder it is, they're filed by file type. So along with that file type, we have the associated retention schedule, disposition actions, and what the cutoff instruction is. So for these employee applications here, it tells us that we need to retain these documents for 3 years and then destroy them. And it also gives us a notice, what the cutoff instruction actually is. So if I were to go about searching for any records that need to be dispositioned or destroyed, I would go about using our records management search here. So what I'm going to look for in our records management search is the destruction of any records. So I'm going to find any records that are eligible for destruction right now, so that are currently eligible for destruction. And here are a few that we have eligible for destruction. So we have Alex Steele's application here. So one thing to note, Laserfiche will not automatically delete your records. What Laserfiche is going to allow you to do, it's going to notify you and let you know when records need to be deleted. So if I were to look at records management actions here, I would be able to destroy this document. So because it's eligible for disposition and destruction, it would allow me to go ahead and destroy that document. Once I do so, it prompts me, it's telling me this is a serious thing and that you need to make sure that this is what you want to do and that you need to remove this file. So once I remove it, you can see this little red mark here, little X, and this is signifying that that record had been deleted. However, when I do open that up, you can see that the important information about that document is still there. So if anyone were to ask what you did with it, you tell them that it was eligible for disposition, that you once had it but no longer do. And this is a requirement that we have for our metadata pane here. So metadata is going to be your important information in regards to a record or a specific document. So it's going to retain Alex's name. It's going to retain any of the important information regarding his employment application. I can also look at records properties, and these are all configurable within Laserfiche. So depending on what your organization may need, these are all configurable to what fits within your organization. So for Alex Steele, it's letting me know that for his W-4, his cutoff instructions are a time and event. It's allowing me to know what the retention schedule may be, and these are, like I said, these are all configurable. And we have this keep metadata option here. which is telling me if I delete that document that it's going to allow me to retain that metadata. So if I were to search on it later, it would allow me to do so in case any compliance issue comes up or if you were needing to open up that document again. So that concludes the demonstration of what Laserfiche records management actually looks like. And to conclude things here, what Laserfiche records management is going to allow you to do, it's going to allow you to manage your records according to any strict rules that your organization may have. It's going to help you comply and prove that rules are actually being followed, so that it's going to minimize, ultimately it's going to minimize your risk there at the organization. So if you needed any additional information or you didn't completely understand what I went through today, I do have my contact information here. Like I said before, my name is Brandon. I am an account manager here at Laserfiche. I've included my direct number and then my email address as well. And also, if you would like, after the end of our webinar today, if any of you are interested in scheduling an overview demonstration, which would go a little bit more into detail of what your organization may need, I would be happy to do so. So that concludes our webinar today. What I'll go ahead and do is look at any questions that were asked, or if you have any questions as of now, I'll go ahead and answer them. So Lori Sika, you asked if the digital repositories were held in a cloud or were they held on site. So with Laserfiche, it depends on what your organization may want or what fits your needs. The Laserfiche repository can be held either with the cloud or an on-site server. So depending on what your needs may be, those are both options when establishing a Laserfiche client, Laserfiche repository. So again, Lori, you asked if a document for retention is permanent, for example, corporate minutes. You were wondering if the digital system can produce that record in the future. Yes, of course. So like I said before, Laserfiche is not going to automatically delete your records. If you set the retention period to indefinitely to have that record, as long as you want, you can produce that record in the future. So you would be able to search for that record later on. So that definitely is something that Laserfiche is capable of doing. Were there any other questions today? I'd be happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. So Crystal, you were asking, how do you tell a file when the next step is to put the file into destruction? And your example was if a personnel file is to be destroyed 3 years after he retires or terminates. So that is going to be your retention period and cutoff right there. So the file is going to know when it needs to take the next step into destruction after the end of its retention period. So after the retention period, after the 3 years, Laserfiche, what Laserfiche is going to allow you to do, it's going to notify you, or depending on how you configure it, it'll allow you to search on that record when it needs to be destroyed. Lori, you asked again what the keyword search capability is across the repository. So what Laserfiche does, the searching is done through our OCR capability. So you're going to be able to full text search within a certain document. You can also search documents depending on the file type, depending on the title of the document. Really, you can search and configure your searches to your liking and what that might look like. Someone asked if organizations generally do an implementation, one record type at a time, or depending on departments or divisions. That's dependent on what your organization may need at the time. Some do it depending on what the record type is, and some may do it depending on departments or divisions within a branch. So it's dependent on what your organization needs at the time. All right, it seems like there's no longer any more questions, so I'm going to go ahead and conclude our webinar today. Like I said before, if you have any other questions or would like to schedule an overview demonstration, I would be happy to do so. I really appreciate everyone joining me for the webinar today, and I hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday.